Thanks again for coming to this lunchtime webinar, this Positive About Down Syndrome lunchtime webinar. Today the title is Nobody Told Me the Truth About Down Syndrome, and we have some very willing and lovely parents of young people with Down syndrome are going to share their stories with you today. We've got two Lauras and we've got Sumaya. The Laura that you've got is different to the Laura advertised because one of our Lauras is poorly sick, as are our children. So we've drafted in Laura, who is our regional coordinator for Wales, who just happens to have a young chap with Down syndrome, but she's going to tell you her story in a moment. So yeah, we titled this webinar, Nobody Told Me the Truth About Down Syndrome. And I know you're all doing a marvelous job, and you attend these trainings, but we find that some professionals, because they only see their, the baby being born and the pregnancy, and once they go out, they don't actually know much of what life with Down syndrome is like beyond that, which is why we produced our booklet, Nobody Told Me the Truth About Down syndrome. And that's not just for professionals, that's for parents as well. Personally, I knew nothing about Down syndrome when I had Billy, and he's exceeded any expectations that I had, and the negative outdated idea that I had in my mind. And we know that in terms of professionals that we come across, if you don't know anyone with Down syndrome, or haven't loved anyone with Down syndrome, or love anyone with Down syndrome, there are quite a few elements of life, real life with Down syndrome, that you may not be aware of. And that's why we've brought these lovely parents to show you their stories, to give you more of an insight of what their life has been like since they had their baby, and a little bit about what it was like for them when they did have their baby. So I'm going to dive straight in with Laura number one, who's going to tell us her story and her life with her daughter Lucy. Okay, I'll start with your first slide, Laura.
Thank you, Lou. Yes, so my name's Laura, and I have a little girl called Lucy who is now 2. So I just wanted to give you a quick background. So I was 42 when I fell pregnant, and I went to see my community midwife. And she asked me, because of my age, would I like screening? And I didn't know what that was. And she said, oh, we screen for Edwards-Patau and Down syndrome. So you can see if your child has that and if you would like to terminate. And I said, oh, gosh, well, yes, if that's what I need to do, I'll do it. So that's how I ended up in the screening program at my 12-week scan. At the 12-week scan, the midwife saw a slightly increased nuchal fold fluid. It was borderline. It wasn't very obvious, but it was borderline. And she said, with your age, I would expect to see that, really. So she was quite negative, and she sent me through for further testing, blood tests and things. But all that comes back with those kind of basic blood tests, just say, yes, because of your age, you've got a high chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. So I went down the NIPT route, which wasn't free on the NHS at the time. We pay privately because I didn't want to have the invasive testing, partly because I'm a bit of a wimp, and partly because of the increased risk of miscarriage. I had 2 NIPT tests over the space of 4 weeks. Both came back inconclusive, frustratingly. I don't know why that is. I have a suspicion it may be due to my weight, but I don't know. So I went back to the screening midwives at the hospital, and they said, come in quick, let's do a CVS test before, well, let's do I can't remember the word.
Amniocentesis.
Amniocentesis, that's it, or a CVS. Come in and we'll discuss it. And because I had a front attached placenta, I had to have the CVS. And because it was Easter, they rushed through the results for me, which was great. But the way the man delivered the results was a little bit negative, well, quite negative, really. A quick conversation. I'm sorry to tell you that your child does have Down syndrome. Let us know next week after the bank holiday if you'd like to continue your pregnancy or terminate. And you might want to do some reading over the weekend. Didn't mention pads, didn't mention anything. So I reached out to my network, my community. Through that, I came across pads. And then we decided we were carrying on over that weekend. And then we went to, to have a scan and see a bit more of Lucy. So I got into the Great Expectations group in PADS, which was very supportive and very helpful. I took lots of inspiration from there to make our announcements on Facebook about expecting Lucy and her extra chromosome. And we then a couple of weeks later found out Lucy had a complete AVSD, which is a common heart condition with Down syndrome. So PADS put me in touch with a heart buddy, and I also reached out again to my local community to see if people through Down Syndrome Northeast could put me in touch with people who had been through this. And I started going out for lunches with lots of different ladies locally and chatting to lots of people online. And I got a heart buddy locally through PADS as well, and chatted to her about her experiences. And that was just really reassuring, really. I went to see a feeding midwife who helped me with my colostrum, which was great. And that actually kept Lucy going in her first 24 hours because I wanted to breastfeed, but she struggled to feed. So that feeding midwife was going to come back and see me about that while I was in hospital with Lucy, having just had her. But unfortunately, she couldn't come and see me. She was obviously too busy. So I ended up not being able to breastfeed Lucy, which was disappointing and frustrating at the time. But I was pleased I'd done the colostrum harvesting. And we had a great fetal medical consultant called Gareth, Gareth Waring at the RVI in Newcastle, and he booked our C-section in, and that went really well. He agreed with the PADS research about when we should do the section, and she was born kicking, screaming, way better than anybody thought she would. She didn't need any oxygen, and we got put on a normal ward, which we shouldn't really have done. And Gareth has said in future he wouldn't do that because ultimately we did need some support around the feeding. So he did move us into a different ward. Things go so fast at this point, it's crazy. That first year just flew. There's Gareth, second picture in. That's my other half, John, in the first top picture, holding Lucy just after she was born. And we took her back to meet Gareth because he'd been so instrumental in supporting us in the pregnancy, and we just think he's fantastic. We moved into the PADS New Parents group from obviously the Great Expectations group, and saw lots of babies in their first 18 months doing great and hitting milestones, and again just really encouraging of you know what the next 18 months would hold. We attended lots of information sharing sessions through PADS. We did a brilliant one on DLA, which really helped us to understand how to fill out the DLA form and help us get that for Lucy. We knew she had a problem with her eyes. She has her eyes turn in, and she also has nystagmus where the eyes wobble. And we went into an information sharing session with an expert from who helps PADS called Maggie Woodhouse, who's lovely. And she gave me lots of information that really helped going out to see professionals locally who didn't necessarily have that specialism and that understanding that Maggie has. So I was able to share that information with them, which was great. We also did the online physio that PADS offer that helped Lucy hold her head really young. And we started Lucy in childminders because I needed to go back to work part-time while we were waiting for Lucy to have her surgery, her heart surgery. And obviously with the heart surgery, we were attending lots of paediatric cardiology appointments. They kept a regular close eye on her, but kept telling us she's doing better than we thought she would. One of her holes was smaller than the other, so she was fine. And just, you know, we'll probably do the operation when she's about 1, but we'll play it by ear and see how she goes. And so, you know, in the meantime, she started sitting up, as you can see in the top right there, when she was about 10, 11 months old. Partly, I think, well, predominantly thanks to the online physio sessions through PADS, because at that point we hadn't started the NHS physio really. I think we'd had 1 appointment before she started sitting. So, you know, that was really helpful to get that going while we were on the waiting list for the NHS physio. And she just spent the entire first 18 months just absolutely shocking everybody how well she did. Although they said they'd do her surgery when she was about 1, around August 22, they decided to not rush it and put her on the waiting list, but she wasn't particularly, you know, urgent. Therefore, we just had to wait, really. They felt by November it was starting to become a little bit more urgent. So they did push her up the list and say, you know, we will try and get her in as soon as we can. Unfortunately, that led to a number of cancellations, a number of moving those appointments, delaying and also cancelling and not knowing when the next appointment might be. That was really tough. That was a really, really tough 3 months for me, mainly because, or 2 months, mainly because I just needed to get it done, because it was very much build yourself up and then be let down, build yourself up, be let down, was a hard thing to go through. I don't know if it's my personality, maybe I'm a bit of a control freak because I'm a recruiter, but I did struggle with that. And once we had the surgery in the January, I mean, I did a PALS thing to kind of make it known how upset I was about the cancellations, and that comes on later. But once she was in there, in and out, they said it takes 7 to 10 days. They wanted us out after 5. She just smashed it, and she just did, as you can see in the pictures, she did so well. And we were so proud of her, and we really appreciated all the support the local charities gave us, bringing in toys and practical things for John and I. But yeah, they said 6 to 10 weeks for a recovery. It took 5. She was sleeping back on her tummy after 5 weeks. And then all of a sudden, after about 7 weeks, she started crawling out of nowhere. I'd spent months the previous year trying to get Lucy to crawl using NHS physio guidance and PADS physio guidance, and thought she's never going to crawl. And it was obviously to do with her strength. And once she'd had a surgery and she was recovered, she was off. And now we struggle to keep up with her. She crawls so fast. So, just to touch on the PALS thing, I did go back after Lucy's surgery in the January. I went back in the February and met with the team and discussed my PALS, and they have changed at the Freeman in Newcastle. They have changed slightly how they book surgery in like Lucy's, so that it hopefully doesn't create as many cancellations when it's non-urgent like we had. So from surgery this year, we're now in November. So this last sort of 10 months since her surgery, we've moved into the preschool group when she turned 18 months. We went on our first family holiday to Spain, which was brilliant. Our childminder's closed, which was a little bit frustrating. And that's one of those things that any parent of any child can go through. We couldn't find another childminders locally we were happy with, so we put her in a nursery where we knew families that had children through that nursery who had children with Down syndrome. So then we knew they had experience, and that has helped. But with nursery comes bugs. So we've been very poorly since she started in July. I think we've had something every month. But again, all my friends that have typical children tell me that's not unusual. I think with Lucy, she just struggles to fight things off a little bit more, and things can affect her a little bit more. Our paediatrician says it's not that she doesn't have an immune system. She's not immunosuppressed. Her immune system just doesn't work as well as a typical child. So we just have to deal with that when it comes. I've gone back to work. I went back to work in the March. I'd kind of done bits here and there. I work for myself as a recruitment consultant, and my mum and I have our own business. So I was able to be flexible around Lucy's surgery and, like I say, just, doing bits here and there. But I have gone back full time since March. And if it weren't for the bugs since she started the nursery in July, it would be plain sailing. But obviously those bugs do get in the way sometimes. Appointments aren't too difficult with Lucy. With me working, I spend a Friday with her, and some Fridays they're able to move appointments to that day, and that's what we do amongst other things. We'll have lots of fun and go out for lunch, but we might have to go to the hospital for an hour or two to have a look at her eyes, or she's being fitted for special boots to make her ankles a bit stronger so she can start to walk. And we're just, continuing to basically watch Lucy grow and watch how she brings so much joy to not our lives, but everybody's lives around us and everybody we meet. And we were in a cafe the other day and somebody said, I have to go and buy your daughter a present. She's brought joy to my day. And that was just I've cried, obviously, because that was just the sweetest thing. And it's just so lovely.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Laura. Sorry I moved you along to make
No, don't worry.
But thank you very much for sharing. I think that's a really nice point to end on. And we're going to move on to Samaya's story. So she's going to tell us all about her experiences up to now. Thank you. Thanks, Samaya.
Hi, so I'm Samaya and I'm mum to Usaid. So when I was pregnant with Usaid, at the 12-week scan, we knew that there was a high chance that he would have Down syndrome. That came through the blood results. Like Laura, I was explaining, they were explaining all the additional testing that I needed doing, and I just thought, oh yeah, I'll do it, not knowing what I was actually sort of letting myself in for. So I just thought, oh yeah, we'll swim through the blood tests and stuff, and it'll all be fine. And it's just another thing ticked along this journey. But the blood results did come back with a high chance that we would have a child with Down syndrome. It was a 1 in 84 chance. So we were given an appointment with the midwife. So we're talking about COVID times now as well. So I got a call to say, you know, you've got a high chance, it's 1 in 84. We would like you to come in tomorrow to see the midwife so that we can explain things to you. I'd have to go on my own, which obviously when you're given news like that, to then have to go and digest other stuff on top of it, you know, all the additional bits, you're in constant worry. So to have that was quite stressful. The following day I did go in. My husband did say to me, he goes, oh, just ask him if I'm allowed to come in. But because of COVID protocols, he wasn't allowed in. But the midwife, she was really lovely. She goes, I know he's not allowed to be in, but we'll put him on speakerphone and he'll be able to hear everything that's being said. And he'll also be able to have an input and ask his questions too. So that really, really helped, even though he wasn't physically there, just to know that, you know, he was able to have that input. Really, really helped. I was offered, you know, they gave me all my options, including termination and everything. And then they told us to just go home, have a chat, think about it, and then let them know what our decision was. We went home, we decided that 1 in 84, that means 83 chance of not having DS. We didn't feel like we wanted to go for, we were offered the amnio and everything as well. But we didn't want to risk our pregnancy, and we were just like, no, we're just going to go ahead. We said that we were committed to this pregnancy regardless of if this child had Down syndrome or not. So we sort of just carried on with the pregnancy. I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes a good few weeks down the line. So along with having gestational diabetes, we were offered additional scans. I had my 20-week scan. There were no markers. There was nothing showing that the baby had DS. And everything was just going really, really well until I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes a few weeks later. With the additional scans, one of the scans I went for, again, COVID time, so I was going on my own to these additional scans. It was in one of these scans that they flagged that the baby wasn't measuring so big. It wasn't measuring as big as they were expecting the baby to measure at that time point, and also femur length and stuff. So they had concerns. So the sonographer went and spoke to the midwife, and really just, I think reassuringly, it was the same midwife who'd given me the news that I had high chance and who I'd already met before. So she came and she goes, right, this shows that there are additional markers on top of it. It doesn't mean that your child has Down syndrome, but these are just more markers pointing towards the fact that your child might have Down syndrome. So it was, again, another shock to the system because I thought everything was going really, really well. So then we were offered, we suddenly moved into high risk, and we were given a consultant. My consultant was really, really amazing. He made sure that my husband was there for all of the appointments. He waived all the COVID protocols. It's important that he's there. Everywhere along the line, I got the care that I received was really, really amazing from my consultants and from my midwives. Yes, they offered me termination, but once we said no, that was off the tables, and every other appointment that I had, it was never mentioned again. Everything was just about, we need to just find out. Additional scans were booked to check heart issues and things like that, and it was just to find out the best possible care for Said when he was born. So yeah, he came along. We had a lot of drama, but you know, he's thriving. He's doing really, really, really well. I'm just going to move on to the continuity of care. I fell pregnant very soon after, well, a good few months after. So it was the same team that I had that looked after me. So from my community midwife all the way through to my consultant, I was put into high risk because of the way my pregnancy had been with USAID. But it was reassuring that I had the same team there because they knew my history, so I didn't have to constantly go over what I'd been through the first time, because some of that was quite traumatic to sort of recount. So to have the same people who understood was really, really important to me. They were also able to meet USAID. So my community midwife, she got to meet USAID in person when he came to one of the first appointments with me. My consultant and the other midwives at the hospital were able to see photos and videos of USAID and to see how he was doing and how he was thriving. He was crawling at the time, sitting. He was doing a lot of things that, you know, people were expecting him not to have been doing, but he was smashing his goals. Also want to say that that continuity of care, that sort of reassurance, it is possible. I mean, in hindsight, having heard other people's stories about how they were given the news of their child having Down syndrome, and that, you know, it was negatively given to them, and the doubts that it would put in their mind, I'm there to say, I'm the case study to say that it is possible to have that continuity of care, the same consultant, to have a positive experience, that it is possible. And with the right education, we are able to get there, because you know what, having Usaid in my life is absolutely amazing, and the amount of things that he has taught us as well. And we put our faith, I know for me, when I was going through the pregnancy with Usaid, I put my faith in the medical professionals. And if I'd have had a negative input from medical professionals at the time, I might have had doubts in my mind. I wanted to continue the pregnancy, but if somebody had told me, oh, you know, maybe that's not, you know, if they kept pushing me towards a termination route, I'd be doubting my decision. And when you're already in a fragile state of mind, I think it's important to have support there, that people are able to help you, to be able to guide you to groups like PADS and other places, so that you can have that support in place to help you deal with everything that you're going through at that time. Usaid now, well, he is absolutely amazing. I had so many fears. He's in preschool now. I had so many fears over the summer, and you know, it was just there in the back of my mind. How is he going to do? How would he fit in? You know, all those things just going through my mind. How is he going to interact with other kids? How are the other kids going to interact with him? Will the nursery be able to provide all the support that he needs? And they were all going through my head. And he started preschool life in September, and he is absolutely loving it. We picked a local nursery that's to us. We went to visit them beforehand. We explained that Usaid had DS, and they were not fazed by that. He's their first child that's going through their preschool who has got Down syndrome. So, you know, in some ways I was just like, oh, it's a bit, you know, but they're absolutely amazing. They've dealt with kids who've got additional needs. It's a mainstream nursery, but they've dealt with kids with additional needs. So they knew some of the things already in place. They were already doing Makaton. They really knew what they were doing. They've got one of their workers used to work at a specialist school. So she's got so much knowledge as well. And he is absolutely thriving. They're catering learning to him as well, but also including the other kids. So they're doing Makaton, but they're not just doing it with him, they're doing it with all the other kids, so that all the other kids are able to interact with him. One of my favorite things that came back from feedback was they'd done a book of Brown Bear, and Alison, who's Usaid's key worker, who he is sort of running to in one of the pictures. She did the whole sign, she did the all in Makaton, and she sent the videos to all the parents going, this is what we've been doing this week. They've made their books. This is what we've been doing this week. And these are the signs that go with the book. And it really made my heart burst, because I was just like, you know what, this is amazing, because yes, Usaid needs Makaton, but they're including all the other kids, and it's teaching them so much. It's teaching them all so much. So Usaid, just being Usaid, is teaching everybody around him as well. Usaid has he's got words, but he's not talking, so he can't communicate so much with me, but his body language tells me everything. So the first picture over there is him walking back from his first day at preschool, and you can see that he absolutely loved it. We take him into nursery, and he leaves us at the door. We say bye to him. He's not interested in us anymore. He just wants to go and play. He wants to give his friends cuddles and his teachers cuddles, and he doesn't look back at us at all to say bye or that you're leaving me. He just carries on with it. And when we go to pick him up, he's got a big smile on his face, and that tells me everything that I need to know, that he is loving his life, and he is, you know, he is just a joy. And nursery always tell me every time I pick him, it's such a joy to have around. We'd have 10 of him, and that makes me really, really happy that we've made the right choices for him. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Samaya. That's really, really, really nice to hear your stories and see. I love those pictures. They're really lovely. Thank you for sharing them. So we're just going to go on to Laura, who's going to tell you her story, and then I'm just going to come back and tell you a few more things about the next webinar, and we'll be available if you want to ask any questions. Okay, over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Lou. So some people here might have come across me before. I have been working with and for Down Syndrome UK for the last about 18 months now as the regional coordinator, originally for Wales, but now for Northern Ireland and Scotland as well. So you may have come across me a little bit before. And as Lou said at the beginning, the other Laura that was meant to be here today unfortunately isn't well, so I'm just stepping in last minute. So my young chap here, Arwell, he is now 5.5. He's now attending our local mainstream school, the same school that his sister goes to, who's a couple of years older than him, and he's absolutely thriving. So he, whilst we're now based in Wales, he was born in England, and I had all the typical screening in pregnancy. I came back with a low chance result. There were no markers in pregnancy to indicate that he might have T21 or any other condition. So, I mean, I don't do pregnancy well anyway. So it was just, it was an experience. But what we did have is an absolutely incredible natural water birth. So I went in for reduced movements at 36 plus 6 weeks. I was hooked up to the machines and they said, no, it seems fine and happy, sent me home. He was born 6 hours later. So I was sent home at 36 plus 6. I went in a couple of hours later, exactly 37 weeks. So I was allowed to have my water birth. I had the pool ready for me and it was, really incredible experience because I didn't get to have it with my first. We were, left to bond. He fed well straight away. Nobody recognised any markers or anything. So we stayed for a couple of hours in the lovely midwife-led unit that we were in. And then they offered for us to stay a bit longer to have the, fingers and toes checked before we go home because they weren't particularly busy that day. So we had all our bags packed, we were ready to go, and then the midwife or the person who does the checks came in and kind of looked over him, checked his hands, checked his ears, but when they pointed out the features, they also weren't uncommon compared to family traits. So my daughter was also a very floppy baby, so he wasn't particularly different to her. My husband has small, low-set ears, so the ears were family traits. So we didn't actually notice any differences when my son was born. And it was only when they walked out the room saying, we've noticed some markers of Down syndrome. So it all came as a bit of a whirlwind surprise for us when he was born. He obviously, once they had decided he showed all the markers, they obviously said they needed to do all the checks. So cardiology and feeding and everything was checked. And he was fine. He had a few minor small heart issues, but nothing that needed surgery. And they all resolved. And they said, actually, if we went around scanning every single baby that was born in the UK, we'd probably see a lot of these things across the typical population as well. So we were under cardiology, I think, for about a year, but just, checkups every now and then they signed us off. We were in hospital. We did then end up going back into hospital, and we ended up kind of pinging between King's in London, Evelina, and our local hospital in Surrey because he was jaundice and they suspected he might have had a liver issue. But it just turned out that it was just so he did have a liver biopsy, sorry, but it just turned out to be a transient thing that disappeared after, self-resolved after about 6 months. So apart from that slightly rocky start, he's, fit, healthy, thriving, doing really well. We moved back to Wales to be near family. When he was between 6 and 12 months old, we were living with grandparents for a while before we moved back fully when he was about 12 months old. I was fortunate to be in a position where I could stay at home, be a stay-at-home mum. So when he was About 2, I think he started attending our local private preschool just a couple of mornings a week. Absolutely incredible. They just welcomed him as any other child. He wasn't walking, but that didn't matter. They included him. They had, a high enough ratio of adults to including him in everything they did. I was worried for him then going up to the local nursery, the school nursery, because I think, like any parent, when your child goes to nursery, you wonder how they're going to fit in and get on and all the rest of it. But I needn't have worried. We had the right support put in place for him. He's had the most incredible one-to-one support since he started. He's still got the same lady. We're now in our 3rd year with her, because he did 2 years at nursery. And yeah, the school have just included him like any other child. I used to be a teacher, so I also know it from the other point of view that a lot of the strategies to include children with Down syndrome aren't actually that different to just generally good practice in the classroom. A lot of the children in the class benefit from the strategies and support that will best support a child with Down syndrome and their learning profile. So fortunately, like I said, our local school, although they've never had a child with Down syndrome there before, they're adapting really easily and including him really well. So yeah, he's absolutely thriving. And I keep saying to everybody, I don't want a 3rd child. If you could guarantee I could have another Arwell, I would do it in a heartbeat. If you were telling me I'd have another one of my daughter, might question it. So yeah, just here to say that life with Down syndrome isn't the outdated perceptions that I know I definitely had before having my son. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura. That's really interesting that you should say that, you would have another Arwell if you could. I think we find that a lot of parents say that because of those outdated ideas that we as parents, have carried along and not expecting to have a child with Down syndrome, and carrying along those outdated attitudes with us throughout our pregnancies and those early days, until you know where to get the support and where to to find out what actual real life with Down syndrome is like. So as a life with Down syndrome is changing all the time, and people with young people and children with Down syndrome are achieving more and more, and that's down to a lot of factors. I mean, we've now got the Down Syndrome Act in England, not in Wales or Scotland and Ireland yet, but we're hoping that that's going to make a big difference to make sure that those early intervention programs and school support is like mandatory within schools, because at the moment there's a lot of variation according to where you live, and at the moment it's not a level playing field. So we're hoping that with the Down Syndrome Act it will become more of a level playing field. But with the improvement of healthcare and the opportunities that young people with Down syndrome are able to have, giving them a role in the community, and that has a positive effect on their quality of life, and that has a knock-on effect on their life expectancy. So talking about those outdated ideas, when I had Billy, for some reason, I didn't think he'd be able to read, but actually reading is one of their strengths because they're visual learners, but I don't know why I had that idea. And the other idea that stayed with me from when I had Billy was that he would live with us forever. And I do a lot of work now with young people with Down syndrome, and I have to say that none of them want to live with their parents. And why I thought that was, new, why a young person would want to live with their parents, I don't know, but it was a real epiphany for me that these young people, they want to leave home, they want to get a job, they want to live with their parents, they want to live with their partners, they want to get married, and they want everything that everybody else wants. And for some reason, for me, that was news. But it's really nice to see that actually that isn't just hearsay, that is actually what life is like with Down syndrome at the moment. So if you don't know yet, our website, go and have a look at our website for resources that you might want to share with your parents. What we always say about our website is that it can be translated into many, many languages. And I think if you're coming across a family where English isn't their first language, this is really, become quite a useful tool to spread the words and the information that you might need to help support those families. sorry if you've seen all this before, but I just want to remind you, for those that are new to these webinars, is that we have a lovely closed Facebook group for marvellous maternity professionals. It was just for midwives, but we found that lots of other professionals want to join in. So do think about joining that, and we can share any other webinars that we have, any information. We change our resources all the time. So there you'll be up to date with anything new that we come across. And also, if you wanted to share your, your good practice, or wanted to get any more information of how best to support your families, do join that. And hopefully you know about our Nobody Told Me book and the little orange book of knowledge, which is a postnatal book. So it's sharing those things that you might need that you don't know about bringing up a child with Down syndrome. It's been really useful for our families. I know. Just to let you know quickly about our next webinar, we're having dads talk about their experiences. So often the dads are neglected, I think, sometimes in the maternity experiences, so they're going to share you their experiences. And after this, you'll be given a copy of this webinar, but do fill in our feedback form, because we want to know that whether, bringing these real life stories has been useful to you, because this is the first time we've done this kind of thing. So do let us know if this has been useful and we've given you some information that you wanted to know.